Seeing Luffy notice Warcury, aka I like to call him Mercury, not behind him in the recent installment of One Piece, and then seeing him with the other Gorosei staring at the Iron Giant was very spooky, I must admit. And I know many people are focused on characters like Emu, who seemingly look immortal, and Joe Boy's final opponent, aka Luffy, or even Akainu, who's the fleet admiral and has a serious beef with both Luffy and his brother Sabo for killing their brother Ace. You can even look at Blackbeard, who was very attentive when the Will of D was mentioned by Vegapunk in the recent installment of One Piece. And all I'm thinking about is this: all in all, it doesn't matter where Oda's direction goes with the final saga. There are many final villain characters that could be, of course, the final big bad character. I do want to say this: all the characters I mentioned are perfect final villains, but that's what makes Warcury so scary. He is and among a group of mythical creatures with disgusting levels of haki, and they're not the official final villains, and it's looking so powerful. Like, these guys are looking so powerful, it's insane. So today, let's dissect this funny looking boar and why he is so goated even among the Gorosei. When we first see Mercury, which of course I'm gonna call Mercury because I know he's named after the planet Mercury, which we know is very close to the sun. So Luffy, Joy Boy, like, there's obviously some hints there. When you first see him, he's sitting in the middle, and he's of course he says assess the situation before making any hasty moves, when of course seeing the whole craziness of losing a warlord. And I like how Oda made him the only Gorosei in the next page to focus on Monkey D. Luffy. He gives his respect to Monkey D. Luffy, saying the fact that he took out Crocodile, we gotta put our focus on this guy. So I gotta say, Mercury's been eyeing Luffy even like around 900 chapters ago. Later on, we of course see the reaction to Aokiji not doing his job as an admiral. Saturn is pretty chill about it, but of course Aokiji's missing, and Warcury is pretty pissed off that Aokiji's not taking his position seriously. So definitely thought that was very cool to see the dynamic between these two Gorosei, who I think are very prolific. Like in the latest installment, we saw them both in front, while of course Mars and Jupiter were in the back. So I think Oda likes to position these characters for certain reasons. Of course, after the Marineford War, we see the Gorosei speaking of all the craziness and events, and Mercury talks about how Jinbei being a big loss because of course fishmen and human relations. And I thought that was very interesting, because the Gorosei usually are just savages, like when it comes to like not giving a damn, but the fact that he cared about this definitely makes me think Mercury is not as, how to say, he's super evil, but he does have some logic and has his intellect to him, which I do think he's the strongest Gorosei, so he better have that. And then of course later on we see him pretty much hyping up Blackbeard for having 2 doubtful abilities, saying that no man has ever had that in the history of the One Piece world. But I do want to say this: he doesn't seem frightened by it, and after seeing his how do I say this, his performance in Egghead Island, I'm not surprised. Yo, this guy is a hockey beast, like durability above Kaido and Big Mom. Like, it's just insane what this guy has shown, and he hasn't even fought seriously yet. And I like how Akainu was pretty much yelling at the Gorosei, and Mercury steps in and says, your honor is very trifling to Akainu, a fleet admiral, the same man who killed Ace, the same man who fought Whitebeard. Like, that is a crazy statement to make. Like, Mercury there was not in no fear of Akainu. He even tells Akainu about how Kuzan is teaming with Blackbeard, and he looks really pissed off about it. And of course Akainu just says well, he's not a part of us. So I thought it was pretty cool how Mercury and Akainu are having those interactions early on in the One Piece story. Of course, the next time we see them, the Gorosei, he is the one who tells Shanks, a Yonko, who goes to meet them, let's hear what you have to say. Like, I'm telling you guys right now, there's a whole thing recently going on with Aura. Mercury's been having aura throughout the One Piece story. That's what makes it scary, that Oda actually gratified his aura that he had earlier. I like how later on we see him mentioning that the Neftari clan is the sole clan of the 20, of course, kingdoms that remained in the lower realm. Shows that he knows that, of course, Alabasta should have been a part of the Celestial Dragons. If you think about it, the Neftari clan, even a Gorosei could have been part of the Neftari clan. I'm telling you guys right now, very, very spooky how Mercury speaks about this. And now that we know that Vivi is wanted by Emu, I could see a situation happen where Mercury actually goes to actually kidnap Vivi and Luffy has to step in, and that's where these guys can clash. I think these guys do have to fight for some reason. I got an itch about this. And then of course Mercury tells Imu, who do you want to be erased from history? It makes me think maybe he was there with Saturn during the Rocks God Valley incident. And of course we know there was Garp there in his prime, Roger, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. I can go so many names. So I think the Roxy spec was erased from history, and maybe it took Mercury to actually fight Rocks and erase him from history. Because all we know is Roger and Garp, but maybe the Gorosei stepped in too. Like, we do not know all the details just yet. And I like how during Wano he even tells of course Jupiter that the Dull Fruit that they're talking about, of course, is the Nika no Mi. He says it's even a legend to us, and hints that they're super old and maybe immortal. And of course that is something that I thought was pretty interesting, that he said that. Then of course after Wano we see that he wanted Gear 5's picture removed so badly, as he's yelling to the Marines, and he even says, why is his D initial in his name? He didn't care about his D initial only until he became Nika. And it reminds me of how he probably was the same person that took off Gold D Roger's D initial as soon as he became Pirate King. So it looks like when Roger became Pirate King, take out the D initial. When Luffy became Joy Boy, take out the D initial. When you become prominent, like insanely prominent, you have to take out that D initial, is what I'm noticing. And if you think about it, in the Yonko position, none of them are D. Shanks, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido, none of them are Willie D members. So that's a little neat, interesting tidbit. And you think about, Law doesn't even have a D initial. It's hidden from the world. And when Jupiter, who I think is a new Gorosei, I made a video about that a couple videos ago, he says that Sabo must be an unlucky man for being on Lelouch Kingdom, and Mercury just replies and corrects him and says, no, it's his faith. And I feel like that's interesting, because I think Mercury is the most experienced Gorosei talking to the least experienced Gorosei in Jupiter. That's just a theory, but I've made videos on this, and you guys can go watch it on my channel. You can find it. It's pretty recent. Then of course we see Akainu and Mercury's reaction to Yonko Luffy being on Egghead Island, and I thought it was cool that these two characters who I've been talking about throughout this video are reacting to this. I thought it was very interesting. And when Cobra pretty much is assuming that he's not going to make it out of there after seeing Imu, Mercury confirms it, saying your fate was decided once you saw the great Imu. And he's very direct to Cobra, and I feel like the fact that he spoke and not the other Gorosei while Imu's there, really Oda's trying to highlight he's the leader of the Gorosei. I thought it could have been Saturn, I thought it could have been Venus Juro, but I'm starting to, after what he showed in Egghead Island, I'm starting to believe it's Mercury. I thought it was very interesting, during the middle of Egghead Island, before it got crazy, Imu, of course, wanted to take out an island. And he kind of talks back to Imu, saying there are too many people there. And Imu says it is no matter, pretty much saying it doesn't matter. And I thought it was cool how Mercury talks back and replies with some sort of compassion, some sort of heartfelt message about too many people and too many casualties. And Imu says, I don't care. It shows you that Imu is just more savage than the Gorosei. The Gorosei are savage, but Imu just surpasses it, leagues beyond. Imu is the least human out of the villainous world government. And we finally see his title as the leader of justice, as he says it may serve as an example to others. Even though he was objecting about it before because there's too many people, now he's justifying it. See that? Leader of justice, justifying it, justifying Imu's madness. Yeah. And that title is interesting because if he's the leader of justice, makes sense for him to be the leader of the Gorosei, because the world government believe they're the true justice, absolute justice, lazy justice, all those justices. He's the leader of all that. We see the Marines live by that, so I thought it was pretty cool. And then of course we see his mythical creature form. I'm not gonna say Zone because we don't know if it's a dove or not, but it's called the Fang Ji. It's a Chinese mythological boar or rain deity, which is interesting. We've never seen water delver powers in the One Piece world. I do want to say this though. He is using fire brows. I'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, maybe expect some other elements from this guy. And then of course we've seen it in chapter 1111. Mercury brings out an insane roar, and usually we don't care about roars, but yeah, we've seen Kaido do some of his war cries, like Big Mom talked about it. No, Mercury did an insane roar. We see Luffy's Gear 5th body being messed up. We know Luffy has those Looney Tunes powers, so don't take it that too serious. But then we also see the Marines saying the island is going crazy, and Marines are passing out, and we all know what that means when people are passing out. Yep, that's right. And Dory Broggy confirmed it. He said they are tripping because they're thinking, who's this guy with Conqueror's Haki? And he did it with a roar. And then they go on to block his attack. It took Dory and Broggy to block this guy's attack. Yo, Dory Broggy are no slouch. So if them teaming up, yeah, Mercury is different. And then, of course, Mercury says, do you have any idea who that man is? When speaking about Luffy. And he even asked, what destiny ties y'all together? And Dory and Broggy send him flying, saying that's their friend. So I thought it was a pretty cool dialogue between the Giants and, of course, Mercury. In the next chapter, chapter 1112, Luffy uses his staple red rock that we've seen in chapter 1000. A move that knocked down Kaido and made him compare Luffy to the likes of Rocks, Roger, Whitebeard, Kozuki Yoden, and Red Hair Shanks, Luffy's idol. And Luffy used this on Mercury, and I'm going to touch upon this, why this is a big deal. After Luffy uses this, his hands are throbbing, and he said, how hard is this guy's skin? Now, if he was able to damage Kaido in his human form, and this guy's in his zone form and he can't damage it, I'm going to cut Kaido some slack, of course. Like, people are going to say, oh, his durability is better than the strongest creature alive, but let's just say this, his durability is stronger than Saturn and Venus Juru and, like, what we've seen so far. So he might be the most epic Gorosei because he has a better durability than the two Goroseis and the Yonko. Later on, we see Mercury actually use the elemental fire when he's chasing Dory Broggy and Luffy. No pun intended. It was pretty fire. So that was cool. And this is probably what scared me. Red Rock was kind of alarming and got my eyebrows raised, but this was where my jaw went to the ground. Is when Luffy uses a gear fifth punch. And we know when Luffy uses gear fifth punches, Rob Lucci's almost losing consciousness. Kaido's being knocked all the way to the ground in his hybrid form, his strongest form durability wise. He uses a gear fifth punch and it's not working on Mercury, and his hands are throbbing again. It's even scarier. It reminds me of when Zoro attacks when working on King, and it was a very spooky reason. I'm wondering what the reason is here. Is his durability that insane? Is his durability better than the strongest creature alive Kaido, a Yonko? That is crazy. And in the latest installment of One Piece, Mercury looks extra pissed off at the Iron Giant and Vegapunk speaking of the Willy D. I noticed that for sure. So this guy is definitely a hothead amongst the Gorosei. And I do gotta say this, that is enough. Vegapunk is what he says when he sends the Iron Giant flying. And Imu, I'll tell you guys right now, like, it's a feat seeing how big, in my opinion, how big the Iron Giant is and how he's sending it flying. And I'm not saying that Mercury's above Imu, but I'm just saying that he is looking like, of all the Gorosei, probably the closest to Imu. His power is insane. I must admit, Warcury or Mercury, whatever you want to call him, I like calling him Mercury because I like calling these guys based on the planets, is very impressive so far. More so than even Big Mom did versus Kid and Law, and Kaido versus Luffy. Yes, two established Yonko. And even recently with the whole Kizaru versus Gear Faith Luffy. Like, he's taking no damage from Gear Faith Luffy and some of Luffy's strongest attacks in his base form. And even, like, you think about it, Saturn even took some damage. So he's looking stronger than Saturn. And he's looking like he's stronger than Yonko level. And if he is, then how the hell strong is Imu? And even better, how strong was Prime Joy Boy during the Void Century? And this is the path Luffy will go to being the Pirate King and surpassing the first Pirate Joy Boy by beating the strongest Gorosei. Who knows? But I am super excited for what's to come. Mercury is definitely making me excited for the final saga because he's not even a character who's in the candidate for final villains. That's what makes it so hype.